Well, thank you, Miss Hollington, for coming into the studio. Absolutely love having you. You've actually been an administrator for only 3 years, and before that, you were an A-push teacher and AP psychology. So, how does that kind of help you administer to kids now?
So this is my fourth year in administration. I did a little bit in Florida before I moved here. But when I taught psychology at the International Baccalaureate School, it was a very fast-paced course. It was AP and IB. And I actually had very little background in psychology, so I had to work really hard to help prepare my students. But it helped me understand people more. So it made me wish that I would have taken more classes in college with psychology. So it definitely helps as an administrator because I kind of understand that people are coming from different places and have different things going on. And so it makes me be a little more patient and hopefully compassionate.
For real. Wait, so you actually were at the International Baccalaureate School?
I was.
Okay, how was that experience?
It
You
was
forgot to tell us that the other day. Drop in a little hint.
Just says it home,
It
please.
it was a fun experience. It's a small school, so they start off with 125 students in each class as freshmen, and several drop out because of the workload. And usually the senior classes graduate about 70 to 90 students. And so it's a very small atmosphere, very much like a family. You get to know the kids one-on-one. I mean, even if you don't teach freshmen, by the time they're seniors, you've taught every student. So it's really special. There are students from Shelby County, not a lot from Shelby County, but Jefferson County, Birmingham City, St. Clair County, private schools, public schools. It's a good mix of students. So it was a fun experience.
Oh, wow. So is it kind of like the Harvard of like, I guess, public education schools?
A lot of the students there, school is their number one focus. We had some students that would play sports and participate in choir and things like that. But a lot of the students, they were solely focused on school. But there was a variety, not all students were 4.0 students. They were just kids who were really interested in learning. And that was an opportunity for them to go to a good school.
Well, that's awesome. How did your background and like preparing the lessons and like you said, with psychology, you kind of had to learn along the students. How does that help you kind of sympathize with the kids you're teaching?
Well, you just kind of understand how people think, and you understand that you kind of see them more as a person, and you understand that everybody's different and you never know what someone's going through. It just teaching psychology really makes you think about each individual person.
Yeah, and leading back to kind of that mentality is, how do you think media has affected our generation going through school now?
So you guys saw the book on my desk, The Anxious Generation. I leave it on my desk as a conversation piece for adults and students that are coming in. It's a very well written book, but I told you guys I'm kind of feel sorry for all the technology, but at the same time, look at what you're doing with this technology. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But the social media and how so many young people, you were just kind of given social media with no parameters at all. And there are a lot of parents who do check phones and things like that. So I think the book made me realize that your view on social media and technology is different than mine. And it kind of helps me understand as an administrator, especially if I'm dealing with something that involves technology. It helps me understand the student point of view. And the book is positive because it says, hey, this is what schools need to do. This is what parents need to do. This is what companies need to do so that we can help young people.
Yeah, with like cell phones and media and stuff, what do you think has been the biggest effect on this school in particular with cell phones?
I think even with adults, the biggest effect is attention span. We're constantly getting updates and notifications. We're watching reels and videos that are, a few seconds long. And so I think it has impacted the classroom because you guys are used to this constant feed of information. And I think one of the biggest things is people have forgotten how to disconnect and be mindful. We don't know how to be bored anymore.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, if you were bored, you went and rode your bike, you drew a picture, you read a book, you created a game, like you created some silly scenario with your friends in the neighborhood or your siblings. And today there's so many kids that if you're bored, you just give them an iPad or a phone instead of, it's okay just to go sit outside and breathe and watch the beautiful leaves on the trees. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I think we've forgotten how to be mindful and be still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And then also, just kind of leading back to what you were saying about just taking time away from your phone. What are some ways do you think students could implement that?
So in my own personal life, I try to keep somewhat of a schedule. Like I'm a list person. So I know there are certain things every day that I want to do for myself. Like I want to exercise and I want to stretch. I want to read, so just setting aside time for those. And I actually I have a little app on I know it's on my phone, but I check it off because I like to see that I have exercised, that I did read today. And so I think just setting aside time and putting your phone in a location where you're not going to see it. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I'll leave my phone upstairs if I want to do something else. I also set time limits for social media on my phone. There are times when I delete the apps off my phone just to try to keep me from checking
That's
them.
so real though, because it's something different when your phone's right there and not using it versus it being in a completely other room. Because I feel like a pull to have to pick up my phone to do the weirdest stuff, like check the weather 3 times in a row.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You should not have the feeling to do that.
Do you think that that mentality of having a checklist or just setting certain screen times, do you think that has an effect? Okay, I've exercised today. I can check that off.
Mhm.
I've gotten off my phone for an hour today. I can check that off. Do you think that mentality can help students?
Oh, absolutely. Because what I find is when I set my phone in a different place and I create a list of things that I want to do besides doom scroll on social media, it makes me feel better. I feel productive, or I might actually find something else around the house to do or have a meaningful conversation, with a family member instead of the constant pull to the cell phone.
Yeah. And then leading back to what you were saying about how the cell phone has affected classrooms, do you think the way that we're teaching class now is going to have to change in order to keep students' attention? Do you think we're going to have to find a way to get fast-paced learning in order for the student to fully absorb that information?
I do. I think our teachers are doing a great job of pivoting, especially over the last few years, and keeping students engaged. I know you guys probably all hate the cell phone pouches and things like that. Sorry, but it is great because if it's enforced, then you don't have a choice but to put your phone over there and connect with the people around you. And that's what we want in class. And that's what we talk about with teachers is we want to see you guys talking to each other. We want to see you talking to the teacher. We don't want to see students just in front of a Chromebook or on their phone the whole period, because you need to know how to work with other humans. And I think our teachers are doing a great job of getting you guys to problem solve and talk to each other, rather than just look at a computer. I sent a student survey out about a week ago. And one of the questions I asked was, what is the number one thing that motivates you to stay engaged in class? And so far across all grade levels, the number one thing is interaction with peers, whether it be working on a project or something like that. A positive, fun environment was second. Very few people have chosen anything to do with an app or a computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, do you think this school and the students in particular, do you think they thrive with group work, or do you think that's one thing that they flaw at? Because my mom always says, I grew up I was in 4th grade when COVID hit, and obviously when you're growing up, those developmental skills of going out and talking to people. So I get some social anxiety sometimes when I'm talking. So I know if the teacher turns to me and I don't have any friends in that class and they're okay, so go into group work, and I'm oh my God, what do I do now?
Yes.
So do you think this school in particular is having is good at social interaction with students or not?
I think so. I think we're growing and we're getting better. And I that is another question that was on the survey was what keeps you from participating?
Yeah.
And the number one thing, I want to say it was close to 30% of students said just feeling shy and unsure of myself for the answer. So we're trying to work with teachers how can we teach this, especially to freshmen and younger students, and how can we encourage students to participate without a fear? So, one thing is if a teacher puts you in a group and you have to come up with the answer, we hope that that's not as intimidating as just cold calling, raise your hand. What's the answer now? So we're hoping that some of these that you guys will be able to learn and grow with these skills, because as you guys see, you have to work together and be able to talk to people. And a lot of jobs are like that. Not every job, but I think it's how we problem solve as people too, is working together.
Do you think like the environment of the classroom, as far as like the positioning of the desk, really affects how these students interact with each other?
I think so. When I go in a classroom and students are in groups and the teacher asks them to, like yesterday, I was in a math class, and the teacher gave them 4 problems that were all worked incorrectly, and the students had to work together to find the mistakes and explain the mistakes. And so they had to know what they were doing. They had to be able to explain why they were right, and they had to work together. And if you're just sitting in rows and you say, turn to your friend, most of the time you're going to turn for a second and then you're just going to go back to doing it by yourself.
Yeah.
But sitting in a group, if you're like in a little quad, then you're looking at each other. You have to do it.
Like putting importance on intentionally building not only like your own education, but your social education as well.
Yeah.
Because that's this very important aspect of school, is like homeschool kids. They don't really get that. But when you come to a school, the idea is you're going to learn how to socially interact, but that gets taken away with the cell phones. So,
and I think students, as teachers, do this more in their classroom. Everybody will be comfortable with it. If it's a normal part of the process that you know that this certain teacher is going to make you talk to other students in the class, then eventually you're not going to be as nervous. And so that's what we want. We want everybody on board so that it's not like out of the blue, oh, you're expected to talk to someone, and be a professional at it.
Yeah, you obviously see this from like a bird's eye view, but I feel like when we go to talk to students, like some of us are like scared to talk, but if we're in groups, I feel like we are either compelled to make a friend at least, or just like go and talk to the people in that group and like actually get some social interaction in, because school, at least in my opinion, is not just about like the learning and stuff. It's about like the bonds that you make and how much you talk to other people and the social interactions that you make.
Absolutely. And I think you learn from each other. I've seen this when I'm observing classrooms. A student can explain, oh, this problem is wrong because of this, in a way that the teacher might not be able to. And it's just because sometimes you need to hear it from a peer or someone. They have a different way of saying it. So, and when you're in these groups, I know you're like, some people may think, oh, I don't know anybody in that group. You never know. You might make a friend.
Well, this is completely off topic, but just from like noticing you like interact with us and then coming into your office the other day, like you exemplify calm is contagious. So how do you think, because obviously you have to be aware that you are very calm. How do you think being calm as an administrator really helps influence the students you're trying to connect with?
Well, hopefully by being calm, I want them to see, sometimes if you're in an administrator's office, it might not be a pleasant experience, but I want it to be, as comforting as possible, because we all make mistakes, So I guess I'm calm because I'm really not shocked by a lot, throughout my life. I've seen a lot, and I know that we're all just human. It kind of goes back to psychology. Like everybody can make a mistake. The best student on campus can make a mistake, and it doesn't define that person. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. So I think that's another reason why I'm calm, because I'm like, you're a human that made a mistake. And it's going to be okay. It's going to stink right now. But in my brain, I'm always like, well, how are we going to get through this? Like any problem that comes in, even if it's in my personal life, okay, what's the problem? What can we do to fix it? Yes, it stinks right now, but we're going to get through this. We can't just bury our head in the sand and cry about it. So
I think that is such a good mentality to have, because sometimes I know, like, if I make a mistake, I'll do it to myself. I'll like shut down and I'll be like, I made a mistake. My life is over. But then I'll have to like realize that it's not the end of the world if I make like a small mistake,
That
because
teenage brain.
we're made to make mistakes. So I think that mentality is so good to have.
it is. And it's okay to cry for a minute. I cry, like you can be mad at yourself and cry for a moment, but then you also have to come back to, okay,
Back to reality.
time to pull up my pants and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And do you think being a mom and now a grandmom has kind of developed a better, like, I guess, perspective on how you operate with these kids?
Yes, because I had a totally different upbringing and lifestyle that my children had. I grew up in a different state and a different community. All 3 of my kids are different. I am an assistant principal at a school with over 1,600 students. And so it really does help having taught and then having children that now my youngest is in the 10th grade. I kind of I know what it's like. I know that you have 7 or 8 teachers, and I know that you have after school activities or jobs and families. And so, yes, it definitely helps.
Because I think too, something that I've seen is like, you don't realize that the adults walking around in your life were once your age too.
Yes.
They were once kids. And I feel like after I saw something about it, about like my mom and my dad, like being a child once, I like understood the why behind them like getting me in trouble or saying certain things. I'm like, well, they were once kids too. Like maybe they do know a thing or two about growing up in this time
like
period.
when we make certain mistakes, we have to like realize that they've lived through those mistakes too. So we have to like kind of listen to them.
Exactly. And I bet like being in a school and obviously like growing up has allowed you to kind of have that perspective of how students operate. I mean, I bet it's changed now since cell phones and everything.
Yes.
But kind of gives you a better understanding.
It does.
Well, leading back to kind of what you're saying about like preparing students, not only like educationally, but also socially, what are like some of your biggest advice and takeaways towards students going off to college?
I think students need to explore all of their options. I know we ask you all the time, what do you want to be? What do you want your major to be? Where do you want to go to college? I think it's okay to slow down a little bit. My daughter's a junior at UAB, and her freshman year, she was almost in tears because her advisor, was telling her, you might not graduate on time if you study abroad. And she was like really stressed. And I said, stop. I don't care if you graduate on time. Do you want to study abroad? Do you want to see the world? Great. If take classes that you might not necessarily think you're interested in, but there's something telling you to take it if you can. Just explore all your options and make sure that you do what you want to do and not what other people say you should do. So, and when you're applying for college or the next opportunity, try to make your resume as rich as you can. Instead of just listing, these are the 15 clubs that I was a part of and honor societies. Well, what did you do? Like, try to make a difference in a few of the activities that you participate in rather than just having a list that's very generic and bland. Like, actually try to make a difference.
Yeah, because kind of falling back on what you're saying is so many students have that mindset of I need as many extracurriculars, as many sports, as many academic things on my list, but every student's thinking that same way. So it's what impact can you make within your world that is going to really stand out on the applications?
So like if a student is really interested in math, well, maybe you're going to take advanced math classes and not English and history. It's okay. But if you do that, it might give you free time to volunteer or create a new club or do something that you're really interested in. So
yeah. And then my parents have always told me too, they're like, girls, stay in college as long as you can because it's a fun experience. Like it's a fun time growing and learning. And like you said, you're never going to know your career path. Like you could go to college for business and then go out work in business a little bit. And then all of a sudden you're like totally flipped and you're drawn into this whole different aspect of life. That's kind of like what my parents did is you don't really know what you're going to be, until like you're almost dead. So
there's so many, I've seen so many adults that went to college for one thing and they're doing the opposite of what they went to college for.
Yeah.
Like there are very few people who know from a young age, this is what I want to do. Some people may start off as accountants and then they end up doing something completely different and owning their own business that's more of on a creative side. You just never know. So I say explore, keep your doors open, really do what you want to do and learn as much as you can.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for coming in and talking to us.
Thank you for inviting me. I had a great time. Y'all made it easy. Thank you.
Yeah, let's go. Oh, that was really good.
That was really good.
You're a really good speaker. Oh my gosh.